As always, we look to our guides, we feel them in our bodies, and we look to the sky to see more clearly that which is represented within us and without us. So for the astrology forecast today, yes, we do have 2 retrogrades currently happening with personal planets, and we want to honor that especially and just sort of laugh through it. Laughter truly is the best medicine, and that's going to get us through not just these retrogrades, but this deeper sense of healing our inner mother, our inner father, and these inner lineages, the bloodline. Jojo mentioned, the waters within you and the blood within you that has been here before, right? The lines of blood that go back centuries and eons. And mentioning the history of humanity as well is also very important, because it's not just that we're from earth, right? We're also spirit. We are spirit imbued in earth. So all of these kinds of ideas of family and familial ties come out quite intimately when it comes to a full moon in Cancer. The moon in Cancer is the most comfortable. Cancer and the moon are harmonious together. The moon rules Cancer energy, so it sort of is like the queen of its domain right now, the queen in her castle. And in this way, we're all tapping into a more divine feminine side of things, this sense of nurturing and nourishment, what it means to be a mother. And this is something that as humans, we might have a tricky relationship with, right? Like not all of us have a mother whom we really are inspired by and really look up to, and we're not always connected to the mother within us. Sometimes we neglect our inner child, right? And it's really easy to do that. A lot of it though comes from this sense of stored trauma in your DNA, stored karma even inside of your energy field. And so our moon in Cancer brings this to a very important aspect where we're being called to redefine what self-care is, redefine what it means to re-mother yourself. You might hear of this term in like New Age circles or spiritual communities. To re-mother yourself is to amplify your inner mother, to heal your inner child. So we're working with these mother and child archetypes here, which Cancer is very familiar with. It's all about the house, the home, making safe space for emotions to be processed and felt. It's the first water sign of this zodiac. And so it's incredibly, like I've been saying, intimate, personal, very much nitty gritty in some ways, and also very much about soothing. I was doing a channeling recently of this moon actually, and got the download that a good mother knows how to soothe her child, and she also knows how to teach her child to self-soothe, so that that child can grow up to not only mother themselves and soothe themselves when things get hard, but to soothe others around them, creating this sort of ripple effect within our emotional field as a collective. And so you have here, mother and child archetypes working together to create self-soothing, nurturing, and nourishing. And for me, I want to make a distinction between nurturing and nourishing, because we often confuse the two. With Cancer, nurturing is a generous aspect. It's the giving aspect of nurturing something that is already there. Nourishing would be giving something that isn't there already. Nurturing is tending to what is already there. And so in this way, we can observe the elements that we're working with. We can observe the karma that we have, or the patterns that were passed down to us through our family. And we can say, okay, how can I nurture what's already here, and where needs more nourishment? What newness can I bring in to have this cup overflow? And a lot of us might be feeling this energy of like sort of emotional overwhelm right now, because our cup is being filled. And if your cup is already full of, stress or lingering tensions, unresolved emotional issues, especially pertaining to the family, it's going to feel very heavy. It's going to feel like mud, because as logic pertains, water and earth make mud, right? So there's this feeling of heaviness that some of us might be feeling right now. And to break down the full moon, for those who don't know, it is the moon in Cancer and the sun in Capricorn. And so the light of the sun is shining upon the moon, giving us this full frontal exposure of our emotional selves and our inner mother and inner child. So it's quite touchy. And in that way, while with two personal retrogrades also happening in the field, there's this sense of triggering, and touching, and trigger points don't necessarily have to be bad, though. They can really be awakening points for us to become more aware of what's going on beneath the surface. And I would just like to point out the beautiful etymology of the word matter and mother. I believe it's the Latin root mater, which is mother. And so I think it's an extremely fun exercise to play around with this concept of all of the material, whether it's your body or like the laptop that you're using or the walls around you, right? It's made from mother material. Material is mother. And so we often neglect our physical selves for, spiritual bypassing, if you will, but we're being really, really called to anchor into the body now. And this is something that I have been talking about quite a bit, but it's especially going to come to an emotional forefront today. So stay tuned for that. And that being said, water plus earth also equals worth. So there's this, and this is something actually that Jordan shared with me over the past week that I just loved. And I believe we were both a little bit high during this time, because he just was like, water and earth, worth. And we both were just like, whoa, everything expanded, because yes, water and earth makes mud. It's this heavy energy. It's the divine feminine elements of the four elements, right, on this planet. But this is also what creates value out of your innate, you're born innately worthy. Your spirit is innately worthy. And when you create with this tangible emotion and tangible body form, you are creating worth that can be, moved through on the physical plane. And so yes, this pertains to money, right? But this also pertains to just like time and presence, and how much your time and presence are worth. Because truly, you being here is an absolute gift. And we're so grateful that you have chosen to share with us your presence on this planet. Like I always say, thank you for being born. I mean it, because your water, your earth, your primordial soup, it directly affects and contributes to our collective soup here. And of course, the lily pads are the perfect symbol for this, because they grow out of the mud. They create these beautiful, gorgeous green and sometimes pink with the flower, right? These beautiful lotuses that bloom and create change and shift and beauty. And all of this pertains to Venus retrograde as well, too, for those of you who are aware of that. So there's this concept of worth and clarity that comes from that. And so I wanted to include this quote from the Tao, which is, "Be still and allow the mud to settle." Alternatively, some translations will ask it as a question of saying, are you patient enough to be still and allow the mud to settle? Are you? And put it in the chat if you've been feeling this heavy energy, and you're like, if you're feeling a little restless and agitated maybe, because believe it or not, that's actually a really good sign that you're on the right path. So breathe into it and see during your day where you can catch yourself in these restless modes, and allow yourself to become still and let your inner mud settle. Allow your inner earth to settle in the pure water that is within you. And if it helps, stay extra hydrated today, because the moon is moving the waters of our bodies very, very quite literally, actually. And so there's this feeling of just like keeping the water moving through you, keeping things flushing out through you. And this is the bit of the darker side of things now. So we had that sense of nourishing and nurturing, right? Like Cancer is helping us to soften our self-care practice and really lean into this space. And it is going to be a bit challenging. This aspect here, the sun being kind of super close to Pluto in Capricorn. This is an earth sign, the earth sign that opposes Cancer, the water sign. So with this in mind, Pluto is the god of the underworld, and the sun is sort of the god of the overworld, right? It's the overseer, the one who sheds light on everything and fuels our environment, fuels ourselves. And so we have this sense of identity sort of being crumbled away. It's very much like an ego death in a sense, but for the collective. And particularly in Capricorn, again, this can feel super heavy. This can feel like, these points of stagnation, and unearthing is the best way to describe it, because what happens when in a new Pluto transit is that the more you ask to avoid something, the bigger that thing is going to become. And Caroline Casey puts it so well by saying, the less we want something, the more Pluto will give it to us. She says, oh no, please. We say, please, no more of that, anything but that, right? Whether that's heartbreak or stress, whatever it is heavy energy. We say, no more of that. And Pluto goes, okay, I'm going to pour you more of that. and come full in with a pitcher of energy to just pour your cup and fill your cup with this experience so that you can widen your threshold. And we've talked a little bit about this before when it comes to Scorpio energy, and Pluto rules Scorpio. So here it's very visceral though in Capricorn. In Capricorn, it's very much, it could come up as, physical pain, it could pertain to money too, stress about money and things like that. Anything that's very tangible. Time also, even if you're feeling like you're running out of time, again, it's that restless feeling. Pluto in Capricorn will teach you how to not just manage your time more wisely, but to honor your time wisely and stay present in the present moment. It's almost like we're being forced to deal with these things. And it's not to torture us, although it may seem that way, right? Because again, God of the underworld. It's to teach us how to better mother, because as you can see, mothering is not smothering. There's this tendency that we have in our culture to think that to nurture or to nourish something is to to be like a helicopter mom a little bit, to be like constantly up in there and in that field and like stifling it down, say, oh no, don't cry, everything's fine, right? That's not remothering. That's probably a continuation of a mother pattern, right? And it's something that we see in all families. I hear moms say to their kids all the time, no, don't cry, and we grow up to tell ourselves, no, don't cry, it's fine, even when it's not fine. And honestly, the best form of remothering is when you can say to yourself, I'm not fine, so how can I take care of myself better, and how can I have compassion for what is not fine here? Because that's perfectly okay. You got to validate yourself before you can move through the whole thing. That's just the beginning. So likewise, self-mastery is not self-sabotage, or self-torture or anything like that, or self-denial. These are not things that, these might be things that Capricorn participates in, and it leads to deeper self-mastery, but not because you're torturing yourself. It's because you notice where you torture yourself and make life harder for yourself, and you go, oh, okay, how can I make this easier for myself? It's like watching your inner child struggle with something they don't understand, and you say, hey, here's an easier way of doing this. Did you know that you could do it this way? And most times the child will say, no, because they don't know how the world works. And your inner child doesn't always know how the world works. And that's okay. Because the big secret is you are creating how the world works actively by engaging in these archetypes, by giving yourself a little more compassion when you don't know what to do next. Just to soften always is just a really good idea, especially when working with something super edgy like Pluto. So instead of self-sabotage and getting stuck on those moments where we self-sabotage, we become aware and we allow ourselves to just notice these things and not beat ourselves up over it, but to move through it and say to our inner child, hey, did you know there's an easier way to do this? Or hey, let's find an easier way to do this. Let's find a way that you can process this easier, because this is hard, it's a challenge, and we're going to go through it together. And it's not condescending, it's not self-pitying, it is gently and compassionately empowering. So test it out with yourself in your inner dialogue, especially for those of you who have moon signs in air signs, or for those of you who like to talk a lot or like to express your emotions through speech. Talk to yourself as if you would talk to a child, and really sit with yourself and weigh these things and move them through you with your breath and all of that. I included also, just as a last note for this sort of energy, is whereas Cancer is a very maternal energy, Capricorn, even though it's the feminine sign, is very much a father energy. It's the It's the daddy Saturn energy, I call it, because it's, structure and rules and stability and dogma a bit here. And so these two energies can actually work together very lovely when we allow them to, meet in the center, because we have maternal matter and paternal pattern. And again, there's the etymology that I just couldn't help but to mention. The word pattern comes from pater, which is father. It's paternal energy. So we have this beautiful divine feminine material, and then the divine masculine patterns that create structure out of this primordial soup, which is apparently my new favorite phrase. So that's that. I know it's a lot and it's big, but again, that gentleness, that compassion, and just to loosen up and lean into this compassion energy more, I had to include this meme because it's completely relevant. Pluto transits be like this. It's the scene in Harry Potter where Ron Weasley is reading Harry's tea leaves, and he sees, I think, a sun, which is happiness, and then he sees some sort of omen, which is suffering and like misfortune. So he says, "You're gonna suffer, but you're gonna be happy about it." And ultimately, that's what Pluto transits are, because once you cross through that threshold of the underworld, once you come out the other side, one, you can say confidently, as Caroline Casey says, "Hey, I have a passport to the underworld now. Like, I just survived that. Like, I have a passport to the underworld." And then you can talk to other people who've gone through it with that kind of language. And in that way, bring a bit more humor to it, a bit more clarity as to why you went there in the first place. Because whatever you're going through right now, believe it or not, there is a purpose behind it. And even if you can't see it right now, Pluto will carry you through that, especially in Capricorn. Pluto will carry you through and make sure that there is a follow through and a follow up. So ultimately, there will be suffering, but you will be happy about it. And so just wanted to honor that and give you guys lots of love and say, that is what I have for you today, from the astrology and the stars. And if ever you're in doubt, just look to the moon and breathe in her love, because she is there as a divine mother archetype that you can work with and help you unravel your own within.